We were going to do this last week, and then we got so deep in discussion about how the conference is going to break down. We kind of ignored the guys in the conference who are going to make it go.
Yeah.
The big time players, the ones who we're kind of surprised about. And look, this is a conference that has some really interesting things happening at a lot of different positions. Like at quarterback, probably a little top heavy right now. Because there's so many things we don't know. For example, Baylor just named their starting quarterback. Max Duggan at TCU, someone to watch, but he's been like this over his whole career.
Mm-hmm.
There's two guys for sure, Spencer Rattler and Brock Purdy. We know what they're going to be, and we may not know what Spencer Rattler's going to be completely yet because he still has a little bit of growing up to do, and he's already fantastic. So at the quarterback position, who are some guys that you've got your eye on that you like, and maybe some dark horse candidates that would surprise people?
I think I'm really excited to see how Tyler Shough does with his new home in Texas Tech. A lot of hype around him coming from Oregon. They need to win now. In terms of pressure on the Texas Tech program, on that staff, they need to win now. For Tyler Shough, a guy that obviously has NFL aspirations, anytime you transfer to another Power 5 program because you lost the job at another Power 5 program, this is his time to shine. It's kind of a prove-it year for both those parties, if you will. So I'm really excited to see what he does and how he responds in a new spot. Another guy, Jarret Daggy. I just go like this when I talk about Jarret Daggy. I don't know exactly what he's going to be. I think he is someone that will obviously have an enormous impact on what West Virginia does, probably more than some of these other quarterbacks because of the, lack of weapons around him. They're going to ask a lot of Jarret Daggy. And so if he's able to answer that call, I think that West Virginia has a chance to be really good, especially what they have on defense. I know they lost a lot in the transfer portal. I think they have a lot on defense to still be able to supplement whatever that offense brings.
I've always just had this idea in my head that Jarret Daggy is a bus driver, and I don't know if that's completely fair to him. And he might have had to be while he acclimated to Neil Brown's offense.
Sure.
So we'll see what happens there. Look, Skyler Thompson back at K-State as a sixth-year guy. I don't think he's going to set the world on fire, but he's very steady, and he's a veteran. Plus, they have Will Howard behind him who had to play as a 17-year-old freshman last year. They've got some depth there that's exciting. But, yeah, I think more or less, if you look at, Baylor just picked Gary Bohannon this past weekend. Texas has not named a starter as of this taping. They haven't named a starter. I assume that's coming soon, and it might be Hudson Card over Casey Thompson. So we don't know. There's a lot of wild cards when it comes to new quarterbacks, and of course with Kansas, it probably doesn't really matter who that is just right now. They've got a lot of other issues other than that, but quarterback's just one of the many issues that Kansas is going to have. But I think there's some interesting things at quarterback going on in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that race down in Austin, you got to be a little bit concerned if you're a Longhorn fan because fall camp is nearing the end. I'm not sure exactly what Texas's calendar is. Baylor's already finished, assuming Texas is almost finished. To not have a starter named yet when Steve Sarkisian said, hey, I want to name a starter sooner rather than later, and I want someone to take the job. To not have a starter named leaves me to believe, okay, someone hasn't taken the job. And so I know there was a report that came out about their first scrimmage, and scrimmages are scrimmages, especially the first one of fall camp, but the reports about that were not great. And so for Casey Thompson, Hudson Card, to not have a guy step up and be the guy who said, hey, this is my team, I'm the alpha, I'm going to run this show, you got to feel a little bit uneasy if you're a Longhorn fan, I think.
Yeah. I do think, moving on to the skill positions, this is a conference that maybe some of that's gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit nationwide, but running back-wise, I think this is a conference that is super, super stacked. Wide receivers, pretty stacked, although, they lose a guy like Tylan Wallace, who was great last year, and, Charleston Rambo, who I thought would have been good in the Big 12 this year, is now in the ACC at Miami. But I don't think that the losses outweigh the gains or things that they've had because Oklahoma adds Eric Gray, and they essentially add back Kennedy Brooks, who opted out last year for COVID. That's two big-time players. Breece Hall, big-time player. Bijan Robinson is going to be most of Steve Sarkisian's offense, you would assume, early on, and most of their offense, even if it was humming, because he's a star player. But really good depth at running back in this league. Your thought on that position?
Yeah, 100% agree. I think there's a lot of guys here that can make noise, not just at a conference level, but also at national level. Like Bijan Robinson has the potential in this new offense to be a guy that's up for a lot of national awards when it's all said and done. Breece Hall one of the most productive, if not the most productive running back coming back this season for Iowa State and what they asked him to do. You go down the list, Eric Gray, like you mentioned, Kennedy Brooks, how are they going to be as a 1-2 punch? How do they split carries? And then you look at Baylor, Abram Smith, Treston Ebner was an All-American as a return man. So there's so many guys that I think have a chance to make an impact nationally and not just in this conference. Also should be noted, there's a lot of these teams in the Big 12 that have not just one, but two good options in the backfield. And so I think they do get lost in the shuffle because there's this connotation of, oh, it's a quarterback league. They don't play a lot of defense. You look around the league, Deuce Vaughn's another guy that plays really hard and is super fun to watch. I mean, he's like Mighty Might the way he plays. There's a lot of guys that can do, I think, a lot of damage on a national scale as well. So really, really strong conference when it comes to running the football.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn might be my favorite player, like in this league. I really enjoy watching him play and like the different things he can do with him. And look, that offense that Chris Kleiman runs at Kansas State is not. It's not Steve Sarkisian's offense. No. It's not Jeff Grimes' offense, which is less ornate than I think the last offense goes, but maybe more effective than Baylor ran. It's definitely not Oklahoma's offense, but he allows them to do so many different things that they don't normally do at Kansas State. I love watching Deuce Vaughn play. And again, he's little, but he's carved out of wood, and it's just I love watching Deuce Vaughn.
He's shades of Darren Sproles almost.
Yeah, he's a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah.
Powerful. Here's the deal. Darren Sproles is a little bit shorter than me, which made me feel good. Most of the time when I meet professional athletes, I feel like God stopped making me early. Like, that's enough. I'm good there. I've got a lot of other people to make. He's fine. He'll be funny. That's his thing. He'll have to stand on his tiptoes to get literally everything out of his cabinets, but that's fine.
Articulate as well. You're articulate and funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you for the second skill that I have. Okay. But no, yeah, I mean, like fun. That's what I thought. But yeah, but with Darren Sproles, it's like, oh, I mean, this little dude. I mean, he's. I remember standing next to him in the post game locker room after they played Baylor. I was like, there we go.
There it is. Yeah. And I mean, it should be noted as well. Credit to these coaching staff, because there's the old cliche, it's not the X's and the O's, the Jimmys and the Joes, which any old ball coach likes to throw that in wherever they can. But you talk about Deuce Vaughn, he is perfect for what Kansas State likes to do. Talk about Breece Hall, perfect for what Iowa State likes to do. And then I think Abram Smith is a guy that has a chance to do really well in Baylor's offense and their new wide zone scheme. But there's a lot of guys that I think are in the exact right fit for them. And credit to these coaches getting them the ball in the way that's most effective for them, most efficient for them.
What's going to be interesting about Abram Smith at Baylor is Baylor did not have a guy, and this includes Treston Ebner, that like you hand him the ball and you can get 4 yards.
Yeah.
Like with Treston Ebner, he's a big play guy. As a matter of fact, I think he's an NFL player, but I think in the NFL he's not necessarily going to line up at running back all the time. Mm-hmm. I think that his skill will be they're going to move him around. Like Tyreek Hill. I mean, he's not that fast. I mean, nobody's that fast. Right. But, he's going to be that kind of guy that just kind of moves. Percy Harvin, moves around and does those kind of X Factor things with an offense like the Saints that doesn't have, rules.
Right. Yeah.
They don't, follow normal things. I think that's where he fits in the NFL. So what Baylor didn't have was, all right, I'm going to hand you the ball. I want 4 yards.
Yeah. They
did not have that guy. Granted, they didn't have an offensive line that also would get them 4 yards. Mm-hmm. Sometimes about them, but they don't have the guy who's like a one cut and go, because the wide zone is you don't waste a lot of time.
No.
I mean, it is, so you're talking about one cut, one look, decision, go.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do is make your decision and go, because the wide zone is almost not designed just to gain yards. It's designed not to lose yards. So, the point of it is we're at least back to the line of scrimmage every time.
Yeah.
If everybody does their job to the bare minimum, we're at least where we were when we started out this play, and not in the backfield. And that's not the case for necessarily the veer or the offenses like that, or the spread option, or these different kind of inverted wishbones that we see now that are the pistol offense. That's not necessarily the same thing for them. They're willing to risk losing a couple yards in the running game because they want people to creep up. Mm-hmm. But I think with Abram Smith, can he be a guy who you hand the ball off and he can get 4 or 5 yards?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the best play you can make. You don't need 30 yards on every play. Sometimes at the end of the game, you need, instead of 30 yards, you need 5 yards 6 times to run the clock out.
Absolutely.
They need that. I think that's what he can do in this offense.
Absolutely. And I think that's where Treston Ebner might be a different flavor for you in the offense. Like you said it great. He is phenomenal in space. Abram Smith, previously was a linebacker, was a running back, was a linebacker, running back again, gets downhill in a hurry, which is what you need in this offense. And I think, riffing on that, that's to me why Gary Bohannon was the right guy for this job. You talk about just true quarterback, let him go play 7-on-7. I don't know if he's your best option, juxtaposed with a guy like Jacob Zeno, who's a great pocket passer, but Gary Bohannon is going to keep you on schedule. He's not going to lose you yards. Also, you get to add the whole quarterback wide zone, quarterback power thing, and especially if the offense can just be, the offensive line can be a step above development-wise from a year ago, they have a chance, I think, to really do some exciting things on that side of the ball.
Yeah. Wide receivers and tight ends, listen, there's one. I mean, this is not a big tight end conference. So we'll flip it. Charlie Kohler at Iowa State is an NFL player. He's going to be a pretty high draft pick in the first couple rounds, I would think. He's a big guy, catches tons of touchdown passes. He is, if I'm a linebacker or a safety, and I'm drawing Charlie Kohler, I know that my week is going to suck.
Hopefully you got a little bit of help, too. Hopefully they got – but then Iowa State's got Allen, too. I mean, they got a lot of guys they can get the ball to, which is – it's just kind of funny to me the way Iowa State's built, and Dave Aranda talked about it a little bit during Big 12 Media Days. The Big 12, in some regard, is sort of trending more and more towards that Big 10 makeup of things. You see these teams going double tight end. Baylor would go double tight end a lot this year. So, no, I'm 100% with you, though. If you got Kohler – you're in for a long week. So there's nobody on any scout team across the Big 12 that can emulate what he's going to bring on Saturday afternoon.
No, again, and the thing is where he's going to hurt you is, he'll make some big plays for a tight end. I mean, he's going to get some that are 35 yards. It's going to happen. But where he's going to hurt you is like 3rd and 9. Like he's going to go about 11 yards, a couple yards past the sticks, and stand there and go, I dare you. Go ahead. I'm going to jump over you, or I'll be bigger than you. I'm going to knock you down. Like you're not going, or I'm going to catch it at 7 yards, and good luck tackling me right then.
Yeah,
you better square up on me, and that's tough, And so it's going to be. I'm going to say this for the first time in a long time. I like Iowa State's offense. I like what they're going to be able to do, power and knocking you around. And look, they've got Hutchinson, the wide receiver, who's really good, but honestly, this offense is going to be about knocking people in the mouth and making them come up with a bloody lip. I really enjoy that. I watched enough of the spread in the Big 12 conference, which the spread's fine.
Yeah,
but I do like an offense that pretty much tells you here's what we're going to do, and we're not going to try to catch you in space all the time, or this is not going to be a track meet. This is going to be, we're going to mud wrestle, and at the end of this, you're not getting up.
It's the opposite of all gas, no brakes in Texas. It's no, we're going to dictate our tempo to you. We're going to run the football. We're going to be more physical than you. We're going to knock you down. And then at the end of the game, when it's 21-7, we're going to go home and probably do it again next week after everyone ices up. And so I'm really interested to see what happens to Iowa State when they play in Oklahoma or a team like Texas that wants to go fast and they're down by 2 scores. I'm really interested to see, okay, are you able to then climb back in? Can you generate enough firepower to be able to get into those shootout kind of games and dictate the tempo at that point? So I'm really excited, though, to see what they do and how that translates, because there is just a myriad of different schemes in the Big 12 right now, and Iowa State is sort of that outlier that I think it's trending more and more towards as we progress here with these recruiting.
Yeah. Wide receivers, to me, it starts and ends with Marvin Mims. I mean, he was freshman last year, was fantastic. I think he's in that CeeDee Lamb mold of give him the ball, and watch the show.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a league that usually is pretty deep in wide receivers, but there's been kind of a transition there as to where we don't know who they're going to be. Look, Baylor a couple years ago was a wash and really good wide receivers, and then last year nobody put in a good year. So we don't know about that. TCU, who's their big playmaker going to be on the outside, really? West Virginia's got to answer that question. Kansas State has to answer that question. There's a ton of teams Texas really does kind of have to answer that question at wide receiver.
Yeah.
So many Texas Tech all have to answer questions at wide receiver. Oklahoma doesn't.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State doesn't. But Iowa State doesn't. And those are probably the top 3 teams in the league. But that's a position that I'm having a harder chance wrapping my arms around with. Who's got the deepest group outside of the obvious ones?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think obviously Oklahoma is just it's embarrassing how many good receivers they have. Mario Williams is a guy that I'm really excited to see. Early enrollee, true freshman from Florida. Dude is lightning in a bottle. I think he'll be huge in the slot for them. You look around the conference, Brendan Presley is a guy that I really like. You mentioned Oklahoma State. I think he's going to take a big step this year, had a huge bowl game. As far as the other teams go, I'm excited to see what Baylor has. I know there's guys like Tyquan Thornton who were great the year before in 2019, his sophomore season. kind of fell off a year ago. Is that because of the scheme? Is that because Charlie Brewer is running for his life every other play? I think he could be in for a big bounce back year. He may be a guy that has like 4 catches, but his yards per catch will be like through the roof, like 30, 40, because it'll be wide zone, wide zone, wide zone. Tyquan Thornton, 40 yards downfield, touchdown, because of what this offense is going to allow them to do from a big play standpoint when they do pop. We'll get to that later. But Tyquan Thornton's a guy that I'm watching pretty closely to see how he's able to come back from a year last year that obviously was less than his expectations.
Yeah, and this is just kind of short little sidebar. One day if I could pick position players from every state, like what the best ones is, like if I want to get fast players, I'm going to South Florida. Like that's where like the fastest guys seem to come from. Why? I don't know. I mean, like, I know there's fast guys everywhere, but, like, if I want a team full of fast guys, like, I'm going to go, like, Tampa South, and I'm just going to get guys who can run.
Yeah, Tyquan.
Tyquan Thornton's from Fort Lauderdale. So he's from South Florida. So you got him. If I want defensive linemen, I'm going, like, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, North Florida, like East Texas, like those, that's where I'm going to get those guys, like linemen, that's where the mean linemen are. Quarterbacks, I want to go to Texas because there's so much development with quarterbacks at an early age that guys can play a little bit quicker, or that they've been running college offenses, like Diet Coke college offenses, essentially, like they're not full-blown college offenses, but they're running that kind of offense all the time. Dang. Since the 7th grade, they're running the same offenses that you're running, save, 11 protections, they have 3. Like save, 50 routes, they have 3.
No West Coast? No West Coast for the quarterback?
But so, and maybe a little bit on the West Coast, but like a little bit on the West Coast, because there's some good guys out there. But like, and then on the West Coast, that's where I want to go get my, my linebackers, my guys. Like, I'm just telling you, like, but again, and of course, linebackers is an ever morphing position in modern college football, as we see the 4-2-5. Like now that 4-2-5, one of those 5 is really a guy who might have been a linebacker, might have been a safety. He's not really either one. He
can burn
this thing now.
Yeah.
He can run, but he can't run maybe laterally that fast, or he runs laterally that fast, but not back that fast. So we're going to put him right here in the box, and he's going to cover the tight end, the running back, and he's going to wreak havoc, and that's what he's going to do. But if we put him back at a normal safety, he couldn't do that. If we put him at the middle linebacker, he's going to get knocked over. So we're going to put him out here in space and make sure he cleans up out here. Yeah. But, that's an ever-changing – it's not what I thought. Like, when I was a kid, Lawrence Taylor's a linebacker.
Sure.
Now, granted, he can play in any era, but, like, there wasn't, there weren't guys, for example, like Terrell Bernard was not a linebacker.
Right.
Like, if you look at him compared to the linebackers of yore, it's a different thing. It's a different thing altogether. But we'll talk about defensive players next week. Okay, of the offensive linemen in the Big 12, the big-time guys, who would you like to be blocked by the least?
Who'd like to be blocked by the least? Golly. Connor Galvin's my neighbor. And so seeing him in the driveway, I'm like, I really would like to just not be on your bad side probably. Now, Baylor's offensive line will have a lot of questions to answer, but Connor Galvin's a large human being. I might vote Connor Galvin there.
I'm going to vote Wanye Morris from Oklahoma.
Okay.
I like, he's the one that I would, no matter how big and badass a defensive end or linebacker I am, I just don't want to draw that.
Yeah.
I'd rather go somewhere else. I would just rather be somewhere else. Like that to me, I'd rather be somewhere else.
Yeah.
I don't know. And again, like this is a harder thing to gauge year in, year out. The lineman's the hardest thing to judge. You can think you're going to have a good line coming back, and then you don't because of whatever reasons. And, so it's hard to judge. But like that dude right there, I don't want him. Like if he gets his hands inside my pads, no, I don't want that.
That's probably across the board for me, at least for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But I think you hit it on the head. It's tough to gauge. The best metric for me is returning linemen. That's why I think Texas has a chance with 4 coming back. That's why I think Iowa State has a good chance to be good. Obviously, just because of the way that they do things at Iowa State too. You're gonna have a good offensive line, but it is kind of feast or famine. It seems like when you try to take a look at what you got on the offensive line.
All right. Well, we talked offense this week. We'll talk defense next week, and plus we'll have a couple games maybe next week.
Yeah, that sounds
great. We'll have some games to talk about, which will be more of our show. When we come back, Chalk Talk. JD goes to the board and shows you Jeff Grimes' new offense at Baylor. This is the Big 1-2, brought to you by Shorty's Pizza Shack on 365 Sports.